This might be in your guys' way though. Is that in your way? Anybody's way? Okay. All right, moving on. So I'm going to continue to smooth that out. I am. I'm going to build a head. I'm going to build a head as long as these slabs cooperate, but they're pretty stiff, so I think I'm going to be good here. So because I'm building a head, obviously I'm just making the neck right now. So I'm going to slip and score the next slab. So another trick that I like to use sometimes, I'm not sure that it actually does what I think it does, but this is what a lot of ceramicists do. We were like convinced that this is the way, this is how it works, and my way is, I've discovered, is the best. What I do like to do is I like to score, slip, and then score again. It really incorporates all that slip into the clay and makes it nice and squishy. So then when these things fit together, they fit together kind of like Velcro. So this into the slab is going to overlap this edge, so I want to make sure I slip and score that as well. I don't want to connect like 2 points to each other where I have like basically the seam right there. I want to overlap them so I can avoid any cracking that might come up. So I'm just going to pinch that seam together, really compress it. Get a little ahead of myself and score the wrong portion. So these slabs I have rolled out right here are the entire bag of clay. So just keep that in mind. And I was telling Michael, the best way to roll out large slabs like this that are kind of uniform in shape, if you turn your bag of clay sideways, so it's lengthwise, and you cut it lengthwise in just like large strips, you'll be able to get even slabs fairly quickly. Like these were just straight from the bag. Okay, blend that all in. And I've left these, like, Michael started making these slabs at what? Just 2:30, maybe a little after. And from sitting on this table for like just a little over an hour, they're pretty darn stiff. They're almost getting too dry to work with. So things can stiffen up pretty quickly, especially if it's hot outside and you need something to dry fast. Pop it in the sun for a little bit. We'll also talk about, I actually might go grab one, but using torches too to kind of speed up the building process. I'm gonna let you guys play with fire. I wouldn't let anybody use that stuff in the beginning because it becomes a bit of a crutch, but when you're working large, you kind of have to use some of those tools sometimes.
So if you were to start doing detailed work from here, like you wanted to do more detail for the neck, would you do like additive work?
So
or-
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be kind of pushing from the inside. So you just kind of work with generalities to begin with, and then you start to kind of, you do a little push and pull and working the surface. That's what's nice about working hollow, is you're able to kind of push those forms out if you need to. So like with this one, I'm already kind of seeing that this is the front of the neck. I'm already like visualizing it. But we'll start to kind of see maybe if I wanted to make it a male, I'll kind of start to form that Adam's apple and the way the neck kind of tapers up into the head. And I'll start to kind of manipulate that as I'm going. On the small side. So I'm also blending that coil on the inside. But those of you that were in beginning, remember how long it took you to get to this point building with coils?
Yes.
So if you do it right, you can make something really big really quickly. And you'll notice I'm always supporting the inside as I'm pressing on the outside. And if you're working large scale, absolutely work on your banding wheel. It's very difficult to walk around your table every time you need something. So definitely work on a banding wheel. That way you're able to work on the whole thing. You're not just working on one side at a time. All right, so I've got that first initial form built up. I'm gonna start adding slabs on top. So the nice thing is I can, like, if I just want to work with a little bit of a smaller slab here, kind of build up the underneath of the chin, I'm going to cut that shape out. I'm not going to just use a plain slab. So, let's see. Grab that. You guys have rulers, but if you want to invest in one of these, this is my favorite thing. I bought it for $1 at the dollar store. They're not expensive. I have about 15 of them because I always lose them. 5 inches. I know I keep telling you to go out and buy your own tools, but if you're an intermediate, you're probably in it for a bit of a long haul if you're wanting to stick in ceramics, so it might be good to start investing in your own tools now. Not to knock the ones that we give you in beginning, but they're not the best quality. If we give you the best quality, your toolkits will cost like $200. So that's going to build up like that underneath the chin. So I'm going to slip and score. Notice how I kind of like saw if it was going to work before I attached it. Planning. Also, if you're interested in seeing some more of like how Christina Cordova works, you can watch Craft in America for free on PBS. And she's in the episode about identity, and it's really, 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 really good. I feel like I'm gonna force all of my classes to watch that episode. It's amazing. Not only is she in it, but Diego Romero, who also makes really beautiful pottery based on like Pueblo and combination of Pueblo and Greek tradition. And it was a really great episode. I watched it the other day and I'm like still thinking about it. I love how big and fast you can make things with broad spot. I know everybody hates this clay, but I think it's wonderful. But I've noticed like that students have started liking it again. I think styles are changing. The toasty brown is back.
Well, I noticed in the spring when I was in your sculpture class, I like ran out of broad spot and we were still doing like figurative pieces. And I tried to use stone white, which I still had. And it was like, it was
Working with snot. It felt like you were working with snot, didn't
it
it?
was so frustrating. It clicked in my head. I was like, oh.
Aha! Clay body matters. Yeah. Yeah, often working with clays that don't have a lot of grog in them, it can feel like you're just working against the material rather than it working in your favor. It's all about having the right clay. So, for instance, I use different clay bodies depending on what I make. So I use a really heavy, groggy clay body when I make really big stuff, right? When I make smaller things that are about yay big, I use a clay body that has a little grog in it, but it's not quite as toothy. It's a little bit more like this. And then for my porcelain work, I obviously use porcelain. So I'm using 3 different clay bodies in the studio for different things. Okay. Start building up the side of the head. So notice that I'm slipping and scoring the outside because I'm going to overlap it. And once the clay starts to stiffen up, you can start to manipulate, pushing and pulling a little bit more and working on detail. help it. Notice too, I'm working on newsprint. This is going to help later on. Because you're making large scale work, we'll probably work on making what I call shrink slabs. They're just basically slabs that rest underneath your piece while it's firing. Because when you're firing large scale work, what oftentimes happens is if it catches on that kiln shelf, like even a little snag, and can't shrink properly, it'll crack. That shrink slab underneath is going to shrink at the same rate as your piece, and it'll prevent any kind of problems like that. You learn all this stuff the hard way. I one time ended up with this beautiful, it's like a torso, and it had that loose skin glaze on it that I was telling you guys about. It was amazing. And then because I didn't put a shrink slab underneath it, it cracked. It was like a sitting figure. It kind of cracked all the way up, cracked all the way up to the middle of its back. The piece is ruined. But if I would have put a shrink slab underneath it, it probably would have made it. So, I learned the hard way. I also didn't know about shrink slabs at that moment. Didn't know it was a thing. Okay. Alright, start adding some more slabs. Probably won't get to the point where I like finish this thing. I'll probably work on it while you guys are working. But you can get the idea. Like I've already got, almost halfway done with the height that I need for this piece. I don't know if I'll make 24 inches because I didn't think this one through. It's not that's like proportionally that doesn't work. It is not that tall. Maybe I'll give it a funny hat. I will, out of an alternative material. I'll make him a funny hat. Perfect. Sorry, I just got really excited about my problem solving just then. All right.
Give them a black one.
Yeah. Make them real good and proper. So this summer I was at work, little side note, I've been working on a commission of a man named Tom Pendergast. Was like a Kansas City mobster that is like a Kansas City hero now. He's basically the reason why Harry S. Truman ever became a politician in the first place. Because he wanted him to be a county judge, and so he was a county judge because he owned the city. So I got asked to make this portrait bust of him over the summer, and it was only supposed to take me a few months, and it was a disaster, and now I'm still working on it. Yeah. But I've been really quiet about working on it because I don't think working on a sculpture of an old white guy right now is, I don't know, everybody's favorite thing. I was like, oh, this happened before. It's like, I'm sure, I can't find anything, but I'm sure this guy was awful. Tricky. It's like, I'm getting paid, but They didn't really have very many good options. They gave me six different people to choose one from. There was one woman, and I couldn't find any images of her online. So.
There's no images of her online. Couldn't you have just made a woman and said, here you go?
Yeah, there you go. I imagined what she looked like because you gave me nothing to go from. It's for a place called the Kansas City Club. I learned all these things after I started the thing. It's for this place called the Kansas City Club. It's like this old country club, the oldest country club in Kansas City, meaning it was obviously for only white men at one point. So I kind of have mixed feelings about it. But because they already paid me.
It's Kansas City, Missouri, right?
Right.
Well,
Yep.
I mean, that country club, Missouri's not that old,
Yeah. But Missouri has a mixed
but
history.
racist history.
Oh yeah, they were definitely.
Not as long as
They were
like New
on
England
the wrong
country
side
club.
during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Actually, Kansas was the free state, believe it or not. Now it's the more conservative of the two.
That door's freaking me out.
Oh, it's because the vent's on, and so the air's just fluctuating. And or anytime someone walks in that front door, if they're coming through the front door. Huh?
You can feel the air when it opens.
Yeah. I know our wind tunnel became even more like apparent once we rearranged the studio because there's nothing to block anything anymore. Okay, so like I said, we can start to really build up really quick with this. I'm probably going to give this part a little bit of time to sit up before I add any more slabs. So I'm going to call it quits on this for now. But you can see, like you can build really fast with this method. It's just a lot. It's really sloppy to begin with. It's a lot of working once you get things built. Okay. So I'm going to smooth these things out, and then I'll get to showing you how to build things really fast with coils. Thick, big coils. And those of you that have classes with me before, you know my obsession with compressing. It's still there. It's never going to go away. Just make sure you're compressing everything really well, especially your seams. That way they don't come back to haunt you. You can see like the shape of the skull starting to kind of take shape. Again, just working in generalities before I get too specific. Set that aside. I'm going to set it up on the slab roller over here next to you, Michael. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to grab another board.
I'm getting on that. But no. That's not what I want.
Okay.
Figure.
So, when you're building with coils on a large scale, you want to build with really large coils. So remember in the beginning, we probably built with like somewhat smaller coils because we were making smaller pots. But we're going to be using pretty thick coils if you want to build pretty quickly, okay? So I've got some rolled out already. I also wanted to talk with you guys too, like if you decide to build larger scale and you've got like kind of a complex shape, so you'll see like some of these larger pinched pots up here, those are from Giselle Hicks. So that one that looks like two like basically like cones smooshed together, that's what she did. She coil built two cones and then slip and scored them after they were stiff and put them together. So you can build in like different sections. Are you seeing the piece everybody know what I'm talking about? This one right in between the two feet. Yeah, that's basically two coiled pots put together at that widest seam. So she built them up, one of them upside down and then put them together. So that's always an option. You just have to think differently sometimes when you're approaching scale or complex forms. Requires a little bit of forethought. So, because my clay is all the same consistency at this point, I'm not going to screw with slipping and scoring. There's an artist that I didn't include in the in the slideshow because he doesn't incorporate other materials. If you have a notebook and a piece of paper, I can tell you his name because you won't remember it. His name is Kensuke Yamada. He made fun of me one time when we were demoing together because I like rolled out all of my coils nicely, and he just makes big chunky coils like this and calls it good. You can do that. I don't care. If you can build with a big chunky coil like this, you're welcome to. So he just like basically just gets started, and his work is very fast paced. So when we were working together, we were there for 3 days. I made a piece like this big. He made a piece that was standing, like life size, like this big. Granted, it was a very simple form. Like if you look at his work, it's pretty simple objects. I don't even know if there's anything else on the wall. But yeah, so he can build really quickly just using coils like this. So I'm just going to build an arbitrary shape. See what happens. So Grace, in this case, that's what you would do. Is just like start, not an arbitrary shape, but you would start with a bottomless. Yes. So we can find it. But we can build solid if you'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah. Building like this is so freeing.
I remember last semester in the beginning, whenever I coiled bells, I'd always see everyone else with these beautiful, perfect coils, and I was just like,
It's okay to like when Matt Mitros was here visiting ours we had last semester. He was talking about watching beginners being so like they don't know, like I know too much about the material, I'm ruined, right? Like I know what can happen, I know what can go wrong. So now I'm like very meticulous about things. But there is a freedom in not knowing and seeing like where things go and how you can experiment with the materials. And I don't know if you all noticed, but I'm really like wanting you to think a little bit outside the box with clay this semester. So yeah. So you'll notice like I'm just pinching and I'm not using any blending or anything. That's my blending, is my fingers. You're welcome to use hollow form methods too that we talked about in the beginning. I love that like Stuart and I are on the same page at the beginning because I know that you guys that were in Stuart's classes did the same thing that I did, so seamless. but I'm using my fingers to make sure that those walls are still even. And you'll notice I'm pushing the clay down and around that previous coil.
And this works because the clay is like the same.
It's all the same consistency. Yeah, I'm taking it directly from the bag and putting it directly onto the tabletop. Nothing sitting out. I mean, you will have to slip and score when you come back to it, but that's really the only time.
Does pushing it down help reinforce the shape you already made?
It compresses all the clay together, basically. So instead of, if I were just pinching, I'd be making like some areas that are a little too thin and the walls wouldn't be even. But yes, it kind of reinforces the strength of that wall. Like, this is really sturdy. So pushing that clay down and around is really makes it nice and compressed. And I avoid having any thin spots or places where like cracks could happen and things like that.
Because like I work with like really thick coils,
Mm-hmm.
and since they get pushed down and stuff, that it's like sometimes you know like when you're coiling you get really kind of like shade and
Mhm.
go all over the place.
Yeah,
Does that sort of
this will help.
keep you in the shape that you want? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, in a way, because
Yeah.
of the compression, the clay won't be so thin in some spots and lose its ability to hold itself in place. Like if you guys can't like come touch this and feel this, but it's pretty darn sturdy because I've just been like pushing and compressing everything, and it's actually pretty much the same thickness throughout. Even though it looks chunky, like it's pretty darn good. When I was in grad school, I did a whole semester where I just made large forms like that were like about yay big, just like would freeform like coils and just see what happened. It was a lot of fun, and I grew grass on all of them, which is considered a non-ceramic material. So I even at one point I was like in grad school, I stopped growing grass on things so they didn't want to be known as that person. But I even did it like on some figurative sculpture, and it was very creepy. You see me, I went for my serrated rib. I'm trying not to let myself do that right now. So it's even fun, like I don't normally work like this, but it's really feeling really nice to just be free of my obsessions with making things smooth. Notice when I'm making these coils though, I'm doing the same thing you do on the table, just making sure I'm getting even all the way around. I'm sure most of you that had trouble rolling coils are pissed that you didn't know you could just do this.
I really struggled, but I would do that, and then I would just put it
Yeah.
down on my feet.
Yeah, that's basically the first thing you do, but like in this case, it's like, I don't need to go any further.
I didn't know I could do that, but I did that anyway.
Yeah,
That's how I built my whole school pod. That was my fort.
The lovely thing about building like this too is like all of my finger marks are left in the clay.
This interesting texture makes me think it's a dragon head. It looks like scales.
Yeah, it's just my thumb pressing that clay down in a repetitive motion. Another person that works large scale, you may have seen her around the studio if you've been around for a few semesters. Her name's Raven Halfmoon. She's actually from Norman. She's a resident at the Archie Bray Foundation right now. But this is how she makes all of her work as well, and it's all like huge. Also, if you have questions about building large scale with coils, ask Cynthia Way. You can see that he's been doing that a lot in the last couple couple of years, so I'm sure he'd be willing to give you some tips. So, one thing I wanted to bring up, when you are building large with coil, this may not be necessary if you are sticking within that 2 foot, if you're only going to get to 2 feet, but if you do plan on making something a little bit larger, you want to think about how you're supporting the structures on the inside as you're building. So like if you're building a sculpture that is like a torso or a bust, you might want to add a little bit of an internal spine as like a little bit of an extra oomph to keep it together and hold it in place. And what I mean by that is just adding internal structures that help reinforce like anything that might be a little sketchy. Like if I have this like one area that's going to dip in and I want it to be an extreme dip, I'm probably going to take a coil and just reinforce that. This probably won't happen until like later in the game, but I'm showing you now just to show you guys how that might work.
Can
So-
you also do like dowel rods?
No, because those will burn out. This is also for like later on, like when it's actually outside, if you have it outside or something like that, it will help with structural integrity later on down the line as well. But with this, like it's part of the clay and it's going to help reinforce things and help keep things in place as you're building. So it's just kind of like creating spines or internal structures. If you're kind of thinking of like Gothic or Renaissance architecture, if you're looking on the inside, you'll see all these like kind of internal buttresses and structures on the inside. Those are there to help keep the building up. So that's kind of what you're creating, is you're creating an internal structure that's going to help support everything on the outside. Okay? Does everybody feel like they're ready to get started? Yeah? Okay, cool. I'm not going to sit here and build all day because I want you to work. So today I'm going to tell you guys, you have the opportunity to stay here until 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. So use that time wisely. You can be here from 2:30 to 10 if you want to be. We are working on some other times where you can be in the studio as well, but as for now, that is your time. Okay? All right, go ahead and get started. If you guys have questions or you want me to look or talk about what you're planning on doing for the project, let me know. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. If you want to though, what I would suggest doing is building it all together first. And then we can cut off those parts if you're worried about them like not firing properly, and then fire them separately and you can glue them on later. Okay? I know that's a lot, but
Okay. I had an idea for mine. So have you seen how baby giraffes sleep?
are they like little balls, right?
Kind of, but they arch their neck. And so I wanted to build a baby giraffe, but I
Okay.
didn't know about the structural integrity right there.
So what we can do is build the whole thing kind of like if you want to, we can build that solid. Might be better to build it solid. We'll figure out some sort of internal structure to help support that.
So I figured like the legs and stuff I'd add on after anyway.
Yeah. So when you're building solid, the best thing to do is to build the whole thing as if it's one piece.
Okay.
And then as you're hollowing, you can cut it into sections. Like
So
that's how I
could like leave this.
Right, we cut the head off, that'll and then the legs off. So those parts will be fired separately, but then post firing, we can put them all back together into the boxes. So we'll get there like once we
Okay.
start getting to that point. But yeah, that's great. Yeah, I would just go ahead and get started on that body because like the next
Start with all
probably is
this.
gonna have to support with like a dowel or something because it's probably gonna be fairly thin.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, what's nice too is we can use electrical tape with a dowel and basically make it.
Because what I also want to do is in the middle, I want to take out the chunk in the middle because I want to make it a flower pot.
Ah, nice. Okay, cool. Yep. Yeah, I think, well, you could do two first. You could build it solid and do what I was saying, or you could build the body and everything hollow. Is this going to be standing on its legs? It's going to be laying down?
No, it's going to be.
Okay. Okay.
So like the ground.
Yeah. So I would say
So I was trying to figure out times, so 2:30 to 10.
Yeah, on Wednesdays.
And Monday is 2:30 to
6:30. Yeah, yeah. And then your BFA. So we're working on trying to get like hours for BFA and advanced students on Friday. So ideally, you'll have that noon to 5 slot where it'll be just the 4 of you that are in my BFA class and then advanced students. There's 8 of them, so it should be 12 total. No one should overlap, hopefully. In my mind, it's all working out, but I'm sure there'll be problems.
Yeah, because I have